What does it take to keep the lights on for everyone? Across every island, every city, every grid, through heat waves, typhoons, and surging demand. Across Asia and the Pacific, a new phase of the energy transition beyond renewable capacity, moving toward more complex, diversified clean energy systems that enhance accessibility, affordability, and reliability, better fortifying inclusive economic growth. From rapidly growing cities to small island systems in emerging markets, countries across Asia and the Pacific are navigating different energy realities, yet sharing common challenges to modernize energy systems and prioritize energy security. The decisions we make this decade will shape energy systems for generations, and the stakes have never been higher. ACEF 2026 is the platform for transformation, convening governments, utilities, industry, financiers, and innovators to align policy, mobilize capital, and deliver results. This year's theme, Beyond Transition, Building Secure, Resilient, Inclusive, and Intelligent Energy Systems, defines what it will take to build energy systems the region can depend on in times of growth and in times of disruption. This week, across 4 days of plenaries, workshops, deal rooms, and partnerships, ACEF 2026 will explore 4 defining challenges. How do we build energy systems secure enough to power growing economies? Resilient enough to withstand disruption? Inclusive enough to reach everyone? And intelligent enough to operate at scale? These are the questions our 4 thematic tracks are built to answer. Track 1: Building security for sufficient energy systems and sustainable economic growth. Thematic Track 1 explores how countries can strengthen energy security and build reliable systems to support expanding economies, from diversifying supply and scaling storage to financing the infrastructure that growing demand requires. Track 2: Powering Through, enhancing the resilience of energy systems for stable and reliable supply. Thematic Track 2 focuses on how systems are designed and operated for stability, reliability, and faster recovery, so that when disruption comes, communities and economies don't have to wait in the dark. Track 3: Forging Inclusion in Developing Energy Systems Strategy and Planning. Thematic Track 3 spotlights access, affordability, and participation, ensuring the benefits of prioritized energy solutions reach communities, women, and businesses that have historically been left behind, and that their voices shape the systems being built. Track 4: Fostering Intelligent Energy Systems, Going Beyond Transition. Thematic Track 4 examines how digital tools, automation, and smarter operations improve efficiency, flexibility, and decision-making at scale, and how intelligent systems are becoming the backbone of a region that has moved beyond transition. Over 4 days, ACEF 2026 brings together practical solutions, financing pathways, and transformative partnerships, shaping energy systems that are secure, resilient, inclusive, and intelligent.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Asia Clean Energy Forum ACEF 2026. I'm Yeonji Seo, Energy Specialist at ADB.
And I am Peter Baum, Senior Energy Specialist at ADB, your hosts for ACEF 2026. Before we begin, we would like to express our deep sadness over the loss of life and the suffering caused by yesterday's earthquake in the Mindanao region. Our thoughts are with all of those affected, and we sincerely hope for swift recovery.
The Asia Clean Energy Forum, ACEF, serves as the region's flagship platform for clean energy dialogues, bringing together practitioners from across Asia and the Pacific to share insights, experiences, and practical solutions for advancing clean energy transitions. This year's theme is Beyond Transition, building secure, resilient, inclusive, and intelligent energy systems.
ACEF 2026 takes place at a pivotal moment in ADB's 60-year history, as ADB's updated energy policy responds to the growing demand from countries across Asia and the Pacific for more inclusive, secure, and resilient clean energy solutions that can accelerate energy transitions. We strongly encourage all of you to make the most of this opportunity by engaging, exchanging ideas, and connecting with fellow participants throughout the week. ACEF 2026 is held in collaboration with the Korea Energy Agency.
Before we proceed, we would like to remind everyone to download the Huva application. Through the app, you can access the ACEF 2026 program schedule, important announcement, and other event information. Over the next 3 days, ACEF 2026 will feature a diverse agenda and provide a comprehensive platform for addressing energy challenges across Asia and the Pacific. By fostering security, resilience, inclusiveness, and system intelligence, the ACEF platform aims to support a cleaner and more sustainable energy future for all.
We hope you are ready for a week filled with insightful discussions, beginning with today's opening plenary session, entitled Energy Security and Diversification in Asia and the Pacific.
The scene-setting video has set the stage for important conversations ahead by highlighting the evolving energy landscape and the need for collective action. With this context in mind, let us now proceed with our welcoming remarks. It is my great pleasure to invite you to watch a special video message from the President of the Asian Development Bank, Masato Kanda.
Good morning. Welcome to the 21st Asia Clean Energy Forum. I want to express my sincere gratitude to our co-organizer, the Korea Energy Agency, and to our distinguished guests for joining us. We are here to talk about the future of energy in Asia and the Pacific, but to do that, we must be absolutely clear about the world we are operating in today. We are living through a new normal, defined by compounding global shocks, and our energy sector is standing right on the front lines. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East is delivering a direct hit to the global economic engine for our region, which sits at the end of long and fragile supply chains. This is a massive vulnerability. Geopolitical disruptions don't respect borders. They travel through the arteries of our economies. They affect fair, freight, finance, and factories. They also spike trade uncertainty and land scarcity on the household budgets of the communities that can least afford it. At the same time, we are facing an unprecedented, staggering surge in electricity demand. This isn't just being driven by rapid urbanization. It is being fueled by the explosive expansion of power-intensive AI data centers and the deep electrification of our economies. Add to that, the severe heat waves currently straining our domestic grids, and the reality becomes obvious. National energy systems simply can't keep up on their own. Meanwhile, more than 350 million people across our region still have limited access to power, and over 53 million have no access at all. That means millions of families are trapped in poor health conditions with limited education and zero economic mobility. The old way of doing business is no longer viable. We can't afford slow country-by-country isolated development responses. If we attempt to operate our national energy system in total isolation from one another, we will fail. That is why this year's theme, Beyond Transition, Building Secure, resilient, inclusive, and intelligent energy system is so critical. To survive and thrive, we must build deeply connected, highly intelligent networks. ADB has updated its energy policy to allow us to move aggressively on this front. We are supporting our member countries as they diversify critical mineral supply chains and scale up clean energy manufacturing. We are also driving a sensible examination of low-carbon baseload options, including advanced nuclear technologies and small modular reactors to guarantee grid reliability. We are embracing digital technology and AI as core tools to optimize energy generation, predict grid faults, manage small grid integration, and even accelerate the discovery and processing of the critical minerals we desperately need. But the real game changer happened last month at our annual meeting in Samarkand, where we officially launched the Pan-Asia Power Grid Initiative, or PAGI. PAGI, which will be discussed later in the program, is our answer to a fragmented world. It shifts Asia and the Pacific away from small-scale bilateral projects and moves us toward coordinated region-wide multilateral power trade. An interconnected regional system acts as a collective shield. It allows surplus clean energy generated in one country to seamlessly balance the deficit in another. By 2035, PAGI aims to mobilize $50 billion to turn continent-wide interconnection into reality. Let me tell you exactly how that breaks down. Half of the total target, $25 billion, will come directly from ADB's own balance sheet. With these resources, we'll connect 22,000 circuit kilometers of transmission line across borders. We'll seamlessly integrate 20 gigawatts of viable renewable energy into a unified regional system. We are going to slash regional power sector emission by 15% and in the process help create 840,000 high-quality jobs across the region. Whether through the ASEAN Power Grid, South Asian connectivity, or the Caspian Green Energy Corridor linking Central Asia to Europe, PAGI is how we will secure our economies and protect our people. Now, let's be frank about the financing. Public resources alone can't fund this future. Fiscal space is tightening across all governments, debt burdens are mounting, and traditional aid priorities are shifting. The large pool of capital required for this transition exists right now in the private sector. The problem isn't a lack of global capital. It is a lack of enabling environment and the absence of real de-risking mechanisms. Investors see prohibitive political and regulatory risks in cross-border infrastructure, so they walk away. ADB is changing that paradigm. We are increasing our private sector financing fourfold to reach $13 billion annually by 2030. Under PAGI, we will deploy a robust financing and risk architecture. We will use blended finance, first loss capital, and expand the guarantee instrument to drive the risk premium down and bring private capital alongside public funding. We will do the hard work upstream to make these massive regional public goods genuinely bankable. But we need our shareholders and our partners to step up with us. We need them to increase capital for guarantee instruments and co-financing aggressively to distribute the scale of this challenge across the entire development ecosystem. Ultimately, all of these billions of dollars, these thousands of kilometers of transmission lines, and these advanced AI systems are about one thing: people. They are about 200 million people who will gain improved, reliable, and clean electricity access for the first time because we chose to build connected pathways. Over the next days, I ask that this forum to be more than just a development talk. I want you to focus on concrete actions, investable pipelines, and real operational integrations. Use this platform to build a secure, resilient, and inclusive economic future where no community is left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Kanda, for your inspiring remarks and continued leadership in advancing sustainable energy initiatives across the region.
To continue, now I'd like to invite the Vice President for Sectors and Themes of the Asian Development Bank, Fatima Yasmin, to deliver her introductory remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this opening plenary on energy security and diversification in Asia and the Pacific. Asia and the Pacific remains the engine of global growth. Sustaining that growth, however, depends on reliable, affordable, and secure energy. Today, the region's energy system faces increasing pressures from geopolitical uncertainty and supply chain disruptions to rapidly rising electricity demand driven by digitalization, artificial intelligence, and economic development. The energy landscape is being reshaped by three powerful forces: the accelerated deployment of AI and digital technologies, a more fragmented geopolitical environment, and the growing imperative for regional integration. Together, these trends underscore the importance of strengthening energy security across the region. Meeting these regions' current and future energy needs will require a more diversified and resilient energy system. Recent global events have highlighted the risk of over-reliance on a limited set of energy sources, suppliers, and trade routes. Countries across Asia and the Pacific are contemplating broadening their energy sector portfolios by expanding energy storage capacity, enhancing grid integration and strengthening transmission networks, and deepening regional cooperation. Greater cross-border interconnections and coordinated planning can unlock significant benefits, moving the region closer to the vision of a more integrated and interconnected Pan-Asia power grid, as highlighted by President Kanda. So diversification is essential not only for energy security, but also for affordability, reliability, and sustainability. Renewable energy will remain at the center of region's energy transition. Yet, scaling up renewables must be accompanied by investments enabling technologies such as battery energy storage systems, pump storage hydropower, reserve capacity, and smarter grid infrastructure. At the same time, emerging technologies, including small modular reactors, may provide additional options for meeting growing electricity demand while supporting decarbonization objectives. A diversified energy mix supported by flexible and integrated power systems will be critical to ensuring reliable energy supply. But technology alone is not enough. It needs to be complemented by effective policy and regulatory frameworks. Governments needs to create conditions that encourage investment in transmission infrastructure, renewable generation, and emerging technologies. Regulatory frameworks should facilitate cross-border electricity trade, support interoperability, and promote transparency through real-time information sharing among market participants. By enabling regional power pooling and integrated grid operations, these frameworks can strengthen energy resilience and improve the efficiency of energy markets across Asia and the Pacific. Artificial intelligence is rapidly emerging as both a major source of electricity demand and powerful tool for managing energy systems. Asia and the Pacific is expected to account for 85% of global electricity demand growth in the coming decades. Expanding AI data centers, accelerating electric vehicle adoption, increase electrification of industries, and growing cooling needs driven by rising temperature will all contribute to this growth trend. At the same time, AI can help many of the challenges it creates, and AI-enabled systems can improve demand forecasting, optimize grid operations, enhance renewable energy integration, and support real-time energy market management. By improving efficiency and flexibility, AI can become a powerful catalyst for a more resilient and intelligent energy future. The discussions over the coming days provide an important opportunity to explore practical pathways toward greater energy security, diversification, and regional cooperation. SF 2026 brings together policymakers, industry leaders, financiers, innovators, and development partners to share experiences and co-create solutions. By brainstorming together, this flagship event can help generate ideas and approaches to build energy systems that are more secure, more sustainable, and better equipped to support the region's continued growth and prosperity. Thank you, and I wish you productive and engaging discussions. Thanks once again.
Thank you, VP Fatima, for your thoughtful remarks and for sharing your valuable perspectives.
We will now hear introductory remarks from the President Jae-kwan Choi of the Korea Energy Agency. The Korea Energy Agency has been a long-standing partner of ASEP, supporting regional collaboration and innovation in clean energy. Please join me in welcoming President Choi.
Mr. Masato Kanda, President of the Asian Development Bank. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Jae-kwan Che, President of the Korea Energy Agency. First, I would like to congratulate ADB on its 60th anniversary. I also thank ADB for the contribution to energy development and regional cooperation in Asia and the Pacific over the past 60 years. I look forward to ADB's continued leadership in energy security, sustainable growth, and regional cooperation. ASEP, jointly organized by ADB and KEA, has been an important platform for energy cooperation and innovation in the region over the past 21 years. This forum has discussed common challenges such as energy security, climate change, and energy access, while promoting practical cooperation and solution. I believe this year's theme, Beyond Transition, build secure, resilient, inclusive, and intelligent energy system, reflects the key challenges facing the international community today. Now is the time not only to expand renewable energy, but also to build an energy system that are secure, resilient, inclusive, and intelligent. Today, global energy markets face growing uncertainty due to geopolitical conflicts, supply chain disruption, and rapidly increasing electricity demand from AI and data centers. As a result, energy security is becoming a key issue for both national economics and people's daily lives. In this situation, I would like to briefly share my thoughts on the key value of energy transition presented by ASEP this year. For the past 30 years, I have worked for rural development and social integration in Korea. Earlier this year, I became president of KEA, and before that, I worked with farmers in designing the solar income village project in Guyangni, Yeoju, Korea. In this project, around 10 local residents formed a cooperative and built a 1 megawatt solar power plant on unused village land. The profits from solar power generation were returned to the local community and used for village welfare. The success of this project comes partly from technology and capital. But the most important fact was communication and trust among local residents. The key point was the local residents became both the owners and the beneficiaries of the solar power plant, while the profits were spent within the community. I believe this kind of a community-based profit sharing model is important for gaining public acceptance for energy transition. Based on this model, the Korean government is currently promoting more than 2,500 solar income villages by 2030. This is not simply a renewable energy expansion project. It is a new energy transition model based on community participation and profit sharing. The government also aims to deploy 100 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. This is about 3 times the 37 gigawatts installed in 2023. The solar income village will contribute to the national energy goal. KEA support this effort through financial support, development of community participation-based business model, operation of renewable energy service companies, and the education program for local residents. In particular, KEA is operating a visiting education program to improve public understanding and strengthen local capacity for renewable energy projects. KEA has also promoted international development cooperation projects in the energy sector, together with the ADB and other international partners. We support energy transition efforts in developing countries. Tomorrow, I will go to Indonesia for the launch of a project on agri-Baltics-based electric charging system. We plan to expand Korea's community participation-based renewable energy model across Asia and the Pacific. At the same time, distributed and intelligent energy systems such as ESS, microgrid, VPP, and smart grids are becoming more important in responding to climate change and natural disaster. Korea is also promoting locally produced and locally consumed energy system, where electricity generated in a region is mainly consumed within the community, within the region. Future energy transition should go beyond technology alone. Sustainable energy system must combine AI and digital technology with community participation and inclusion. It takes a long journey for energy transition. At the same time, energy security and climate change are urgent challenges that we must solve together. This is why cooperation among countries, partnership between the public and private sectors, and stronger regional connectivity are more important than ever. I hope ASEP 2026 will become an important opportunity to strengthen energy security and build a sustainable and inclusive energy future for the region. KEA will continue to work closely with the international community toward sustainable energy transition and climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, President Choi, for your continued partnership and support for ASAP and Regional Clean Energy Cooperation. Your insights have helped set the context for the important discussions ahead.
We will now turn to our first keynote message. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Keo Ratanak, Minister of Mines and Energy of the Kingdom of Cambodia.
Vice President Fatima, Vice President Wu, friends and colleagues from the Asian Development Bank, President Choi from Korea Energy Agency, Excellencies, fellow ministers from different countries, distinguished colleagues and friends. First, my sympathies and thought go to those impacted by the earthquake yesterday. I also would like to thank President Kanda for his invitation extended to me in my delegation for this event. I thank the Asian Development Bank and the co-sponsors for hosting us in Manila. 2 years ago, I stood on this podium and said that we need to make sure that our energy systems can evolve in a considered, timely, and ordered way. Today, in 2026, in the middle of an energy security crisis, I would say the same thing again, with a little less comfort around the word ordered. Order is still what good policy must try to deliver, because energy systems are built over years. Investors need confidence that the direction will hold. But crisis does not wait for the perfect sequence of planning. And fuel prices can move through an economy much faster than any one of us can revise a master plan. We see this very clearly in Cambodia. When fuel and related commodity prices rise, the effect is not confined to the energy sector alone. A third of our workforce is still in agriculture and depends almost entirely on imported fertilizer. Our textile and garment industry relies on petrochemical-based inputs. Tourism is around a tenth of our GDP. When fuel volatility hits, all three transmitted into the real economy very quickly, and the cumulative effect on growth is material. So energy security is a macroeconomic question, a competitiveness question, and it's also a household question. The heightened geopolitical risks, unresolved trade tensions, and the policy shifts of the past year are exactly the kind of environment in which small, open economies need options. Keeping the discipline of ordered change is something our government stands by. We also look to building the systems with enough option to operate through disasters. In this environment, energy security comes down to diversification, predictability, and partnership. Diversification is partly about sources of supply. More than 60% of Cambodia's electricity already comes from clean and renewable sources, and we are working towards 70% by 2030. We'll stay the course by continuing to build the supply, storage, transmission, and regional links needed to make energy reliable and affordable as demand grows. But diversification also means diversifying suppliers, technologies, financing sources, and regional interconnections. When one of these is squeezed, and several have been squeezed in the last year, the others must carry. That is why Cambodia is investing in flexibility as well as capacity. In April, Cambodia broke ground on the Upper Tatai Pump Storage Hydro Station, 1 gigawatt of dispatchable, carbon-free flexibility scheduled online before 2030. Alongside it, a grid-connected utility-scale battery storage system is being developed with support from ADB's Energy Transition Sector Development Program. The wider program is expected to lift variable renewable electricity generation by around 30% and reduce annual electricity demand by 9% by 2029 through energy efficiency measures. Then there is predictability. Energy systems are built over decades, and investors need a framework that they can rely on for 15 years and longer. Southeast Asia has the resources, the manufacturing capacity, the talent, and the demand. What capital is looking for is the part governments must deliver. Frameworks that are clear, bankable, and applied consistently over time. Cambodia has worked to make that framework clearer. Our Power Development Master Plan 2022-2040 and the National Energy Efficiency Policy 22-2030 sit underneath every project. We have simplified permitting, aligned grid development with long-term energy planning, and standardized power contracts. The reforms with ADB will move into its third phase in 2027, expanding the energy efficiency regulatory framework and reducing technical standards for renewable energy, buildings, and industry. And looking further ahead, we are working with ADB to design the Sustainable Capital for Advanced Local Energy Initiative, or SCALE in short, so that Cambodia's own banks can also play a larger role in financing renewable energy. The aim is to move beyond reliance on foreign lenders alone by giving domestic banks the rules, tools, risk sharing, and long-term funding needed to finance clean energy projects at scale. There is an old line that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that brings me to partnership. Partnership underpins everything. No country in the world is an energy island. We are tied to each other through technology, prices, grids, and pipelines. And the work of building those ties is moving forward in the region. The ASEAN Power Grid, APG in short, with a fully integrated regional grid targeted for 2045, is the most important expression of this. And Cambodia is an active participant. Just last month, our national electric utility company, EDC, signed a joint study framework with the Lao Utility and the ASEAN Center for Energy to advance the Cambodia-Lao PDR interconnection with World Bank-backed preparation support. Reliable and affordable energy is the lifeblood of our economies. When supplies are interrupted, the price is paid first at the fuel pump and the food market, and only later in policy papers. Cambodia is highly exposed to oil price shocks, and recent disruptions have reminded us how quickly external energy risks can become domestic economic pressure. Here, I want to thank ADB, whose counter-cyclical support facility is giving us the fiscal space to absorb these shocks and protect households. Oil and gas are not the destination of the transition, but they still have a transition role to play. Japan's Powers Asia initiative, announced by Prime Minister Takeshi recently, is timely. It recognizes that emergency procurement, stockpiling, and storage should be treated as a regional resilience effort. Energy security must also be inclusive. Over 99% of our villages and more than 95% of our households now have access to grid electricity, including remote and flood-prone communes served by solar systems where the grid cannot reach. And the new Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund, created under our program with ADB, extends low-interest financing to small and medium-sized enterprises so that the move to cleaner, more efficient operations is not reserved for the largest firms alone. We are also working with ADB on something more granular still, how to support our tuk-tuk drivers as fuel and LPG prices rise, looking at opportunities to accelerate the adoption of e-tuk-tuks in Cambodia. These are already on our streets, but remains out of reach for many of the drivers who would benefit from them most. If families in remote areas wait years for reliable power, if a small enterprise chooses diesel because clean finance is out of reach, or if a tuk-tuk driver cannot afford to leave behind the fuel pump that is squeezing his daily income, then we have a legitimacy problem on top of an investment problem, and public patience is finite. So the work continues, and it continues in partnership with ADB, with our neighbors, with the private capital we are bringing to the table, and with the citizens whose patience and trust the energy transition ultimately depends on. 2 years from now, I hope to stand back on this podium and report that the word ordered fits a little more comfortably again. But whether the world gives us orderly conditions or not, Cambodia will keep building the systems that will give us options, resilience, and opportunities that reach our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your thoughtful remarks and for sharing your reflections with us today.
Let's now move to our second keynote message, titled Delivering on Nuclear Power, Partnership Capacity and Financing in Asia and the Pacific. We are pleased to share a video message from the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi.
President Kanda, ministers, friends, it is a pleasure to be part of this important event. 6 months ago, I was in Manila, signing with President Kanda the first agreement of its kind between the IEA and the Regional Multilateral Development Bank. Now, it is time to deliver. This region has already answered decisively the question of whether nuclear has a role in its energy future. China is building more reactors than anywhere else in the world. The Republic of Korea stands among the world's most accomplished nuclear nations, and we will host our ministerial conference on nuclear power in Incheon this October. Japan is restarting reactors and planning new ones. In April, my colleagues were in Hanoi to deliver the Phase 2 Integrated Nuclear Infrastructure Review for Vietnam. It assesses a country's readiness to invite bids for its first nuclear power plant. The Philippines itself is on a serious roadmap toward nuclear power. Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore are all looking at what nuclear energy can do for them. What we see is diversification in practice. Why? Because being able to rely on different energy sources improves energy security. It is easy to see why energy security is at the forefront of policy decisions today. Markets are in a turmoil. Supply chains for oil and gas are under strain, and regional LNG prices are spiking. Energy diversification supports every topic this forum will discuss: inclusive growth, industrial competitiveness, and the digital economy. They all rely on electricity that is available around the clock, regardless of the weather and also of geopolitical circumstances. Nuclear energy delivers that. No wonder it's back at the center of energy policy. For some countries in this room, nuclear energy is familiar territory. For others, it is newer ground, and new ground takes preparation. The IEA is here to support you. Our milestones approach and inner review missions, our SMR platform, and the Atoms for Net Zero initiative are tools many countries in this region already benefit from. A few months ago, our workshop in Colombo with the Asian Development Bank trained officials in energy demand modeling. And at a very high level meeting in Vienna last March, our teams sat down with the ADB and mapped out concretely how this partnership delivers for your countries. Ladies and gentlemen, my ask of you today has two parts. First, come to Incheon in October. Bring your national positions, bring your questions. This is the moment in 2026 when ministers will gather to chart what comes next. Asia and the Pacific belong at the center of that conversation. Secondly, and this is especially for officials from ADB member countries at the early stages, the path to nuclear power is shorter than it used to be. Engage with us. IAEA technical support and ADB financial support now run on the same track. The alignment is new, and it was made for you. We are at an exciting time to be in this field. Today's decisions will make a real difference for decades. So, I thank you for inviting me to be part of this forum, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Director General Grossi, for your important and timely message underscoring the significant role that partnership is expected to play in strengthening regional energy security and resilience.
We now turn to our third keynote message on exploring a new paradigm for clean energy cooperation, from the Asian miracle to a resilient future. It is our pleasure to welcome Deputy Executive Secretary for Program, Lin Yang, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific.
Vice President Fatima, Vice President Hu, President Choi, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking ADB and the President Kanda for convening this very important event and for the opportunity given to ASCAP, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, to contribute to this plenary session. On behalf of ASCAP, we extend our deepest condolences to the people and the government of the Philippines for the devastating earthquake that happened yesterday. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to reflect on a simple but urgent question. In a world where globalization and multilateralism are under strain, can Asia and the Pacific pioneer a new model of cooperation, one that not only responds to today's challenges, but also opens the ways to clean energy transition and the shared prosperity. Next year, ASCAP is about to celebrate our 80th anniversary. I know ADB is celebrating your 60th birthday. So to answer this question, it's worth first looking back at the path Asia has already traveled. Over the past decades, the Asia-Pacific region has lifted more people out of extreme poverty and at a faster pace than any other region in the world and in human history. This so-called Asia miracle was not accidental. It was built on two enduring lessons that remain highly relevant even today. The first is a strategic investment in connectivity. From roads and railways to ports, power grids, and communication networks, countries across the region made sustained investment that transformed fragmented markets into an integrated and dynamic system. These were not isolated projects, but long-term decisions guided by a shared vision. This connectivity enabled the flow of goods, finance, technology, ideas, and people, and laid the foundation for regional supply chains. The second is a development philosophy centered on people. Asia's transformation was not only about economic growth, it was about expanding opportunities and improving lives. Productivity gains were accompanied by expanded access to education, health services, and decent work, allowing the dividends of growth to be widely shared across regions, income groups, and even generations. Asia's development story is not only one of the rapid growth, but also of poverty eradication, social mobility, and resilience. These two lessons remind us that long-term cooperation requires both strong and well-connected systems and the strong human capabilities. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today the environment is very different. Trade frictions, rapid digital transformation, climate disasters, and supply chain restructuring are becoming more common. For Asia and the Pacific, a region deeply integrated into global production networks, this creates new vulnerabilities. But let us be clear about the nature of what we are facing and what we are talking about. These are not temporary headwinds that will ease with the next business cycle. They reflect deeper structural shifts in how the global economy is organized. The appropriate response from our region, therefore, is not incremental adaptation to a system we assume will stabilize. It's a deliberate strategic thinking and a rethinking of how we build, connect, and protect our economies for the long term. Nowhere is this more true than in clean energy, precisely because of the transition depends on complex cross-border flows of critical minerals, advanced components, and technologies, many of them concentrated in only a few locations. It's uniquely sensitive to structural disruption. We are already seeing these impacts. Instability in one region can quickly trigger global energy and food price shocks, increasing volatility and widening inequality. So we must ask, is the traditional model based on long, linear supply chains still sufficient? The answer is no. Then, what is the core of the new paradigm shift? One scenario we could look at is resilience built on networked nodes. The traditional model, let me give a metaphor here, is like a single lane highway. For example, minerals move from extraction to processing to manufacturing to consumption, step by step in one direction. This model is efficient, but fragile. If one link breaks, the entire chain is affected. A networked node model is different. It's more like a metro system. Each station connects to multiple lines. Flows are multi-directional. Countries are no longer confined to a single role. They can act as suppliers, processors, innovators, and recyclers at the same time. But this shift is not only physical, it's systemic. It's about value creation change. From step-by-step chains to interconnected network, while each additional node strengthens resilience. It's about coordination change from fragmented system to interoperable standards and shared protocols. It's about governance evolution towards networked governance based on shared responsibility, shared incentives, shared trust, and collaboration. In this scenario, data becomes essential. Data becomes integral with the trusted data exchange, enabling real-time decision-making and coordination. In this scenario, incentive shift from cost efficiency to resilience, diversification, and circularity. Success is no longer measured only by cost, but by how many alternative pathways exist, how diversified the supply is, and how quickly system can recover from a disruption. In clean energy, these nodes take many forms: resources hubs, manufacturing centers, technology innovators, recycling systems, and financial platforms. Not every country needs to do everything, but every country can do many things well. We already seen early signs of this model in the trade of electricity, the ASEAN Power Grid, as mentioned by the minister, and the Laos, PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore Power Integration Project demonstrate that the trade of clean energy across multiple borders is possible. At this moment, small in scale, but significant in showing that regional integration can work to enable decarbonization, increase resilience, and attract investment. But network nodes do more than absorb shocks. They confer something more consequential: the power to set the rules. When smaller economies build interconnected systems together, they do not simply participate in standards set elsewhere. They create them. Interoperability standards for cross-border power grids, the mutually recognized qualification for clean energy workers. These are not technical footnotes. They are the architecture of the next economic order. Asia and the Pacific has a narrow but a real window to shape the architecture from within, rather than adapt to it from the outside. This is not a defensive posture, it's a strategic one. So in my understanding, this is connectivity 2.0. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the transition we are discussing is not just technological. It's a massive labor market transformation. Across the region, skill shortage are already becoming a binding constraint. Delays in projects are often not due to lack of finance or technology, but to the lack of skilled planner, engineers, technicians, and regulators. In other words, ambition is not the problem. Implementation capacity is. The scale of what is needed is unprecedented. It creates both opportunities and the risks. If managed well, the transition can drive inclusive growth, but inclusion will not happen by default. A truly people-centered transition must focus on expanding opportunity for persons in vulnerable situations, including women and youth, supporting vulnerable workers in transition, strengthening social protection, and facilitating social dialogues. But inclusion alone will not be enough. The energy transition will succeed or fail whether we can build skilled workforce at scale and across borders. That requires a far more coordinated regional approach, a human capital compact, built around shared standards, stronger training system, and a closer alignment between education, industry, and policy. We need disaggregated, comparable regional skill data in the energy sector, common certification and qualification frameworks, stronger technical and vocational training system, real partnership, and closer links between government, industry, and education providers, stronger protection and transition support for workers. Development finance must also do more than fund infrastructure. It should invest directly, massively, and more aggressively in people through workforce development, training, certification, and institutional capacity building. Human capital must be treated as a shared regional asset, not simply a national responsibility. In this regard, ASCAP, as the most inclusive intergovernmental platform in the region, would like to work closely with ADB and other partners to advocate for this human capital compact. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the Asian miracle shows us what is possible when we invest in connectivity and in people. Today, we must take the next step, and the direction is very clear. We have seen that resilience comes not from a longer chain, but from stronger networks. We have seen that workforce the clean energy transition demands needs to be developed, connected, and supported. And we have seen that windows to shape the rules of the emerging clean energy economy is now open, not later. We need three things. First, a shared vision of where we are going. Second, long-term commitment that outlasts a single project or any single disruption. Third, practical cooperation that moves from principles to standards, from frameworks to skills, from ambition to implementation. I think our region has done that before, and we are confident we can do it again together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Secretary Yang, for your compelling address and sharing your important perspectives on the future of energy.
We'll now break for a 40-minute coffee and networking session. Refreshments will be served in the foyer right outside of this auditorium. Kindly return to the auditorium by 11 o'clock so we may resume the program on time. Thank you and enjoy the break.
Thank you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move to our panel discussion.
The theme for this panel discussion is Security by Design, Building Energy Sector Resilience. To set the scene for today's discussion, please welcome the Director General of Sectors Department 1 at the Asian Development Bank, Hideaki Iwasaki.
Good morning, and welcome back to the opening plenary venue, and I hope you had good coffee break. This is a panel discussion on building energy sector resilience. And as we heard this morning from many speakers, we are at a defining moment where historic inclusive economic growth experienced by many of the region's developing member countries is now challenged by the unprecedented energy demand that the growth itself entailed and the economic pressures from global economic shocks. As we heard from many speakers, artificial intelligence and higher tech manufacturing and large-scale data centers, among others, are demanding strong and capable power grids. Simultaneously, the region's countries are trying their best to navigate challenged global supply chains and geopolitical supply constraints. Business as usual planning and solutions are simply not enough to ensure energy security throughout the region. The situation demands energy supply diversification, as many of the previous speakers mentioned, which often entails new and innovative but complex systems. There is need to move toward more robust alternative fuel sources and next-generation technologies. This means transforming the Asia and the Pacific region's energy infrastructure into an integrated, resilient system capable of sustaining global energy supply and economic shocks. Yet, as we know, new and innovative system solutions, including first-of-its-kind technologies, also present challenges. Capital is needed for design, building, testing, and scaling. Governments must seek and find new ways to de-risk research and other necessary upfront investments in a manner that encourages private sector to lean on the deployment of those new and innovative technologies. As the region considers advancing grids, such as through the Pan-Asia Grid Initiative and new power sources, the purpose of transformation needs focus and attention. Technologies such as offshore wind, offering both scale and increased stability, can reshape regional energy systems. In this context, Asian Development Bank recently became a partner of the Global Offshore Wind Alliance, GOWA. GOWA is a multi-stakeholder initiative to accelerate the uptake of offshore wind worldwide. Energy security is not just about tomorrow's data centers. Instead, it is about improving lives through robust, inclusive economic growth. This morning's panel of experts will discuss their perspectives on how to balance existing socioeconomic needs with unprecedented power demands caused by exponential digitalization, how to de-risk emerging and next-generation energy systems, and how to build long-lasting, sustainable, integrated energy systems across the region. Thank you again for being here. Now, let us begin the discussion.
Thank you very much, DJ Hide, for your insightful perspective. Following the scene-setting remarks, the panel discussion will be moderated by Senior Sector Director for the Energy Sector Office at the Asian Development Bank, Priyantha Wijayatunga. It is now our pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists.
Deputy Minister of Energy, Republic of Uzbekistan, Umid Mamadaminov.
Minister of State, Tourism and Environment of the Maldives, Muawiyat Mohammed.
Country Managing Director of Hitachi Energy Singapore, Anthony Smith.
And Director General, Private Sector Operations Department at the Asian Development Bank, Isabel Chatterton. May we kindly invite our moderators and panelists to join us on stage. They've been faster. Priyanka, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter and Yunji, for the great job which you did in the opening session before the tea and now continuing it. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel discussion, Security by Design, Building Energy Sector Resilience. In fact, this panel discussion is quite timely, as all of you understand, in the current context with global conflicts around and affecting global energy markets and impacting many economies across, particularly the economies in Asia-Pacific region, which are quite vulnerable to energy supply vulnerabilities. And this discussion focuses on how we should look at these issues, particularly the energy security issue, at the design stage, rather than trying to respond to the crisis on an ad hoc basis. So the discussion is more focused on that. And so if you look at the resilience and the security part of it, resilience today obviously inseparable from diversity, as you could hear from the opening keynote addresses of our keynote speakers. Diversifying energy sources, technologies, and supply chains is no longer optional. It is not an option you have, but a fundamental, foundational regional stability, foundation to regional stability. And then the other part is rising digitalization. With rising digitalization, shaping demand and increasing, exponentially increasing demand, with data centers coming in and AI and connected infrastructure are accelerating the power needs. So that's another angle we have to look at when it comes to security. And this challenges not just the capacity, but also the reliability of supplies. Then the other thing that we need to keep in mind is the supply chain fragility is now is an energy risk. In fact, we may not have thought about it, but now, as you can see, with these regional and the global conflicts, the supply chains are heavily affected. From critical minerals to equipment, disruptions can quickly move across borders and systems. Then the other, we had to look at, to answer this, you have innovation coming in to bridge basically this gap of how to address these vulnerabilities and resilience. And in here it comes the smart grids, storage, decentralized systems, which we heard during keynote speeches, and this technology enables flexibility and responsiveness. Now that's also part of energy security and resilience. Energy transition is not just energy transition, but also resilience transition that we have to keep in mind. Not just decarbonizing, but building integrated systems that can absorb and adapt global energy economic shocks. That's something which you need to keep in mind when you design your energy systems. And here comes, again, a regional cooperation. That's also a very important part, as you know, as you heard from the speakers before. No country can achieve these objectives alone. You have to work together as a region, and regional cooperation matters a lot when it comes to this, interconnected systems, strategies, and so on. So with those initial thoughts, let me now switch to the discussion. We have a distinguished panel here, as you could see and hear. We have two ministers, the government, and then we have the industry, Hitachi, and then we have, of course, the private sector, our colleague from the private sector department, Isabel. So let me start off with the government, because the governments are the key at the end of the day who take decisions, and we are there basically to support their decisions and how to move forward. And the first question to Deputy Minister Umaid, Considering the current challenges to global supply chains, as just mentioned, among others, mainly because of conflicts and others, can Asia-Pacific nations move beyond being just reactive to these challenges, but be proactive and build systems that thrive despite these challenges? How do you do this as a proactive manner rather than being reactive?
Thank you so much, Renta. I'm Deputy Minister of Energy, Uzbekistan. That was a great question. Right now, all the countries are planning green transition. I think that we need to plan like resilience-based transition, which means like our energy systems expand under the geopolitical shocks or the financial constraints or any technology bottlenecks happens, should be ready for that. And as you said, proactive resilience has several shifts. For instance, one of them is you have to diversify technology, diversify countries, that fuel supply, technology supply. You have to diversify right now. You cannot rely on one country, one technology, one place. And also, what I mean in technology, based on your resource in your country, you have to see options, what you have availability, hydropower, the solar, wind, or the nuclear energy, whatever available, you have to diversify your technology. This is the one option. And the second shift is the localization. Localization, because localization is a key to help your industry grow also, because your supply chain should be localized based on your resource also. Let's say you have a copper mining, copper production. You can easily produce cables, aluminum production, cables. So the localization is the key. For instance, in Uzbekistan, we are aggressively deploying renewables, but we have strict requirements for the developers. You have to procure the cables, 70% of the cables from local manufacturers, or the concretes or other things you have to procure locally, which means to help your government also. And another thing is you have to build robust grid. You have to make grid priority. Your grid should be flexible. Your grid should be transmission and distribution network should be upgraded. You should put a top priority. Basically say your grid need to be able to host intermittent source of generation, which is we are deploying so much. This is really important. And the investment comes ready grids most of the time. And the other aspect is the creating platforms with the neighboring countries. As ASEAN or in Central Asia, we have already interconnected, but we need to create the platforms which we can harmonize our standards together, we can procure together, or we can create balancing markets there to help each other. It will help for all the interconnected countries. This is really important. And last but not least, strengthen your institutions. And institutions, for instance, 10 years ago, we had a challenging for the PPP models or something, or investors coming, and when investors talking with the government official, it's very difficult to talk because they have to have good institutional capacity to understand all the bankable PPAs or the bankable projects. That's what the investors want to hear, right? So if you strengthen all the institutions, this is also the really important parts of it. And and as a government, you create predictable planned roadmap. It will create I think, proactive resilience planning for the country.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for that very thoughtful intervention. Of course, we know. Let me go to Maldives State Minister Muawiyat. Of course, Uzbekistan and Maldives are very different countries in terms of size, the resource availabilities, and so on. It would be nice to hear from State Minister Muawiyat you have a resource-constrained country in terms of energy resources, and you import a lot of energy resources. And how do you think that you can be proactive rather than reactive to this kind of situations, the challenges you have in terms of energy security and resilience?
Thank you, Priyanta. I think it's a great question. And from colleague Mamadinov have addressed in a very different perspective in terms of the two countries. Maldives is an island nation scattered over 900 kilometers, very tiny islands, and Uzbekistan is a landlocked, compared to Maldives, a huge country, and I guess grid is much bigger and a common grid. For us, Maldives, over 186 inhabited islands where people live. Each and every island has its individual grid, very small. So the impact that we are having because of the supply chain disruptions, what we are experiencing right now is a typical days because of the crisis in Middle East. So 100% of our electricity or energy is from fossil fuel. Just to come to the question, I think from the very beginning of today's open plenary, the video presentation to all panelists, almost we heard the very similar terminology. So that means we are going in a common direction, very focused. So there's a good solution, I think, from what we are traveling. So let's say from reactive, normally always we address or attend something when there is a failure. So, but now we need long-term resilient systems. So simply what we are saying is we have to change our mode from short-term crisis management to long-term resilient development. That's very important. How do we do that? There are different procedures, like all the panelists, the speakers in the morning mentioned. Diversification is a common term we used. So even in Maldives, what we are doing is diversifying our energy. Now, at the moment, we have like 4-5% of our electricity from renewable sources, mainly solar PV. The target is to reach 33% by the end of 2028, just less than 2.5 years from today. So the diversification and regional cooperation and innovative other solutions that we are, like AI. Today we have been talking much about AI and digitalization. So we are very closely working with ADB and other partners, regional countries, our neighbors. So collectively, if I summarize what all these components, that would be just like innovative ecosystem. You have to build innovative ecosystem, making more friendly policies for integration of renewable sources and resilient infrastructure and regional cooperation. I think these are the main three components that collects all the other small components that we have to work. Of course, I think we are in the right direction. Technology is evolving. Technology is not an issue. Of course, it's evolving, it's progressing every day. But what we are seeing in the geopolitics is what we don't have much control over that. For example, Asia Pacific region, it's a very resourceful region. We can go a proactive mode where we can thrive under constraints like these days, where the Strait of Hormuz or other critical choke points like Strait of Malacca, or maybe the man-made canals like Suez Canal or Panama Canal. These are very vulnerable choke points. So what we have seen is more frequent disruptions in the world geopolitics. So more than the technology, I think we have to have cooperation with regional partners and have a fair deal in trading, like cross-border grid connections. So I think more than the technology, what we have to have is a stable regional cooperation that we can rely as a good partners and doing business in a fair manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, State Minister Muyawit. It's interesting actually when ADB after a while stepped into Maldives, assisting Maldives almost 12 years ago, if I can remember right. Our intention was to minimize the Maldives import oil bill. And that was the intention, not really energy security as such, to minimize import bill, which Maldives spent so much on power sector oil imports. And that's how we ended up with the POISE project, the famous project where we brought in hybrid systems with efficient diesel systems and controls along with the batteries and solar panels. Now you can see it has become really a big benefit at a time like this when we have volatile energy markets. So that's being, in a way, proactive. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a forum like this, I should mention a very success story that we have had in the past 2-3 years with ADB. Just less than 2 years back, we commissioned some of our islands back in Maldives where we could go without diesel generation. We shut down all diesel generator sets for 5, 6, 7 hours of the day with solar and battery storage system and the very sophisticated energy management system with assistance from ADB. Dr. Priyantha, I think in the inauguration he was there. It was lovely to travel to the few islands, and it is all well, in good condition, running, and by the end of this month we will add another 26 islands where we can shut down the generators for some 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of the day. And by the end of this year, another 23 islands. So ADB is involved in nearly all our 186 inhabited islands to develop our resilient energy infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have, of course, similar stories in Uzbekistan. We'll come back to you, Deputy Minister, a little later. Let me now move to Anthony, who is, of course, from our technology suppliers, Hitachi. And now, how are the current conflicts affecting major industry players like Hitachi? In terms of supply chain disruption, that's something which really impacting the industries and development and advancement of new technologies, because obviously these issues with critical minerals, rare earth materials, and supply chain disruptions along which connected to this impact all these industries enormously. And how do you see these impacts affecting your advancements?
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. So first of all, I think over the past few years, we've seen a lot of volatility, whether that's geopolitical, economic, or even climate related. And what this has exposed is within the energy system is that the systems remain highly interconnected, but also vulnerable to disruptions. Many countries around the world still are over-dependent on limited resources, on supply routes, and on critical components, which are becoming more and more valuable in terms of availability. So what is happening is this is creating a shift toward a more uncertain operating environment for governments, for businesses, for industry, and also for people in their normal lives. So moving to energy security, what's become very clear is that this energy security is actually inseparable from economic security. And what we're finding and what we see in the industry is that electricity is underpinning everything. Electricity is becoming the backbone of the energy industry. And that is whether it is grid connections or whether it is digitally enabled systems that can communicate with each other. But disruptions can cascade against supply chains, can cascade against costs and prices, and also against growth. So what we're seeing in addition to that is obviously the rising demand. There's change in trade dynamics around the world. And also there's increasing pressure on traditional energy systems that have not had the maturity of investments that generation has had over the past years. So what does this mean in terms of supply chain disruption for industry is that there's a shortage of critical materials and components. There's longer lead times for equipment, and there's increasing pressure on project delivery times. And if I refer back to President Kanda in his speech this morning, he mentioned the old way of doing business may not be fit for purpose anymore. And Director Iwasaki mentioned business as usual is not enough. And what we're seeing is we need to enable more security of energy, and we need to change the dynamics of traditional customer-vendor relationships. And we need to move more towards partnerships, because upgrading the grid and connecting all the remote regions needs a tremendous amount of investment. But there's no point in having that investment if you have to wait 3 to 4 to 5 years for your grid equipment or for your technology. So we have to create partnerships between vendors and customers and OEMs and the technology people, so that the equipment is available at the time when they need it to make sure these grids are connected. So this is driving a fundamental change in how we design energy systems. So we need more diverse sourcing capabilities. We need more regionalization of supply chains. And we need closer collaboration, as I mentioned, across the whole value chain, from the customer's side to support vendors and then their vendors as well. So this relationship has to be across the whole value chain. And therefore, once we do that, we can turn the challenges into opportunities. And I think in terms of connectivity, we need to enable a strengthening of the grid. With all the renewable energy that is being developed and being connected, grids must be treated as critical infrastructure now. And investments in transmission, interconnections, and system flexibility is more important now than it ever is. So in terms of the supply chain, I think there needs to be a fundamental shift in terms of how we do business today, whether that's from a government perspective, whether it's from industry or consumers.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Those insights from the industry, side, and it's quite interesting. We always talk about what we can do in, to accelerate energy transition. We look at technologies and everything else, but we never look at whether the technology is available when you really want it. Because there's all these conflicts across the globe and supply chain issues, and on top of that, increasing demand, obviously will have a very big impact on whether you can really deploy these technologies at the time you really want to deploy. That's very right, and thank you very much for those insights. Now, I'm sure some of these challenges already come out during the discussion. And Isabel, from private sector viewpoint, what are the challenges you think you will face when it comes to deploying these innovative technologies? One of them is, of course, supply chain disruptions, naturally. And so I would like to hear from you some insights from private side.
Thank you, Priyantha. I'm delighted to be here today with all of you. There are 4 major challenges that we see when we try to support the deployment of innovative technologies. First one, the very high upfront cost, and effectively the lack of bankable contracts. That's a reality. Innovative technologies, and in the energy sector, we're looking at anything from battery storage, green hydrogen, offshore wind, etc. All of them carry costs that are proven alternatives, but often lack standardized contractual agreements with creditworthy off-takers. So that's the first and major point. This is why ADB's concessional finance window and our partial credit guarantees are so important when we try to de-risk some of these technologies. For example, when we work with Gulf Solar, helping them implement the battery storage solution project, we deployed over $31 million of concessional financing that was specifically designed to take some of these technology risk away. So it is very important. And also to complement what Deputy Minister Umid said in Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, similarly, we use an ADB-backed PCG, so a private credit guarantee, that was embedded in the bidding structure, and that actually made the off-taker contracts bankable for international lenders. So the first point is really the high level of costs and the lack of bankable contracts. The second point is the fact that we face shallow capital markets and effectively limited long-term financing that, as you know, is required for infrastructure investments. Many Asian economies today, whether we like it or not, have relatively underdeveloped capital markets, and they end up limiting the availability of long-term finance for infrastructure. And that's where the cost of capital gets raised, and that's where we come in. Most innovative energy projects today, without de-risking, would face very high cost of capital. So that's one of the second issues. And the high cost of capital makes them marginal from a commercial point of view for the private companies. So that's an issue that we need to address. The third point is what the panel has already mentioned, which is in some cases, the lack of policy and regulatory certainty. What the governments can do and do very well, and they're the only ones who can do this, is to provide certainty to the market by reducing regulatory uncertainty and by reducing uncertainty associated with all types of frameworks that our private companies need to follow when they invest in our markets. And very often when it comes to technology, one of the issues that we face is that the existing regulatory frameworks in many of our Asian countries have not kept up pace with technology. So we end up with a gap with the reality of today and what the regulatory frameworks enable our companies to do. So for example, if we look at the energy developers today in Asia, they must navigate multiple government agencies. They must seek multiple permits from across different windows within the government. And in addition to that, they need to themselves somehow try to de-risk the transmission grid bottlenecks that very often are existing. As we continue to add more renewable energy into these systems, we need to face the truth that some of our energy grids are not as reliable and as sustainable as we wish them to be. And that takes me to the last point, which is the grid infrastructure gap. The grid infrastructure gap is a very important topic that we are working to address jointly with our governments in the Asian Development Bank. Developing Asia, we have estimated, faces something around 23 billion of annual gap in concessional funds between now and 2030, just for grid modernization. That is an incredible amount of money, and we're working to deploy those funds as quickly as we can in ADB, because without smart, digitized grids today, new renewable energy capacity cannot be integrated. Our private companies cannot face the curtailment risk without having that de-risking of the grid. But overall, just to wrap up these four major points that I mentioned, overall, if you think about technology, it's really one of the aspects that our energy developers need to address. What we would like to see is governments proactively making markets investable. So that requires all of us and the governments and the companies and suppliers and all of us to move beyond from project to project financing to system integration. So basically helping us have a coordinated, collaborative, region-wide approach to building this connectivity and this generation. You may have heard already, because I think our DG, Hideaki, has already mentioned this in the plenary sessions in the beginning, the keynote speakers. Our president launched a couple of weeks back at our annual meetings in Samarkand, the Pan-Asia Power Grid Initiative, we call it PAGI. You may have heard about it in the morning already. It is a very ambitious initiative. We expect that by 2035, we're going to help integrate over 20 gigawatts worth of renewable energy across our ASEAN countries. And we expect to be able to provide energy access to over 200 million people, and at the same time, reduce emissions by 15%. So this is exactly what we mean. We're trying to put our money where our mouth is and making sure that we look at system integration and the way our energy systems and our energy grids function, and going much more beyond individual project by project, both on the sovereign side with governments and on the private sector side with companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel, putting the whole thing into context and giving a holistic view of what we really need to do when it comes to energy security and in the region. You are quite right. Actually, if you look at our sovereign investments, of course, we work together with the private sector. We spend half of our investments in transmission and distribution network investments. Why? Because we have recognized without transmission, no transition, we always call it. Now, without transmission, you don't have energy security either, naturally. Because it's not just putting money in generation which matters, but how to evacuate this generation and bringing it to the load centers. And if you look around, there are a lot of countries, not only in our region, but even in the Western world, where they are really struggling to evacuate all the energy generated, power generated in generating stations to the load centers. Always there are bottlenecks, and as a result, you have a lot of curtailment. Curtailment of renewable energy means lost money, lost opportunities, and putting in more and more fossil fuels into the system. So transmission network investments is very important. That's something which we need to emphasize. I'm sure the governments really need to look at it, and they are looking at it. And let me now switch back to Deputy Minister Umaid to speak a little bit about what you have been doing in Uzbekistan with ADB and others. Of course, we would like to hear more about what ADB is doing in Uzbekistan with the private sector, and to prioritize your energy security related interventions. May not be thinking of energy security, but more to make sure that you have adequate energy, and make sure that your people get energy during the winter. I know there were issues some time ago, not anymore, and it has become a country, energy importing country to an exporting country. That's what I heard during the annual meeting. So we would like to hear a little bit more about yourselves, the energy system in Uzbekistan, how it has evolved over the years. Thank you.
Yeah, last few years, Uzbekistan is, it's transforming its energy sector is really fast, especially in terms of renewables, solar, wind capacities, battery storage. It's not small scale, it's a utility scale battery storage. Right now, we have already reached at least 6,000 megawatts of the renewable capacity already connected to the grid system. Think about our current consumption at the peak load in the winter time is 13,000 megawatt, and the springtime is 8,500. But our renewables reached already, and it's very difficult, challenging to integrate such renewable and then control it. But we reached, and every year we're adding up at least 2,000 megawatts of renewables. It's continuing based. Yes, we have challenges. We have challenges, especially in the infrastructure, because the solar PV farms, you build like, as I always said, you build like a Lego. It's 6 months, maximum 1 year, you just put the farm there. And for transmission line, it takes time to build it. And countries like emerging economies like Uzbekistan need to plan parallel with the infrastructure development. Reserve capacities, transmission lines, all needs to be aligned with the renewable development planning. This is really important. But initially we started deploying all the generation capacities. But now, stop thinking only putting megawatts there. Think about putting the together, integrated resource planning. Because you have to have enough infrastructure to host this intermittent generation, because it's very difficult. And we saw it in the recent happening in the, Iberian island. You have switching based of generation increasing in your grid. It will create a lot of problems. So it's really important the planning is important. And with the ADB also doing a lot of work with mostly with the private sector also. We have world leader developments like Aqua Power, Masdar are there, and then European companies there. They're all working with the ADB for the projects. And I think portfolio is exceeded $9 billion. And also with the government, ADB is working on the infrastructure side. Now they deploying the first of its kind RBL, the result-based loan, which evaluates the investment for the distribution network, and the loan is given by the result-based. Means when you upgrade your distribution network, the loan will be given for the result-based. How much losses you reduce losses, or how many in the distribution network outages reduced. So result-based loan. So this is very creative, and it's I think it's a pilot project for Uzbekistan, and it will be deployed for other countries if it's successfully deployed here in Uzbekistan. And I'm sure it will give some results based on this. Then, as I said, my previous discussion, that planning, integrated resource planning, and certainty, as my colleague also said, is really important for the investors, for the other stakeholders. When government have ready master plan for 5-year, 10-year, 20-year master plan, it's easier for other communities, IFI institutions, for investors to come to that country because you have real ready roadmap. But how you create this master plan? You have to work with different regions and different sectors. For instance, if I'm planning power sector master plan, I need to know for other mining industry, agriculture industry, what's their plan on the next 5 years. So it's integrated planning. So this is really important points.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Umid. It's quite interesting, actually. The concept of integrated resource planning was abandoned in 80s and 90s when they started talking about energy sector restructuring and so on. Centralized planning is not the way to move forward. Now we have come back one whole round, and now we are talking about integrated energy planning. Without that, you can't really have any predictability on what we really need, and you don't know what the sectors would be doing. And so the importance of integrated energy planning has come back now. And in fact, we are doing a lot of work with IAEA on integrated energy planning to assist countries on that. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. Statement, Mr. Mohit, just slightly deviating from what we have been talking. Now, it's easier said than done when you're talking about diversity of energy resources. And we talk about various technologies, various supply chains, and so on. But of course, it's not the decision of one person or another. It's a decision of a government. It's not easy. What are the kind of challenges you face when it comes to taking decisions on prioritizing which energy sources you have? One example is, for instance, just now during the keynote speech, we heard about nuclear, right? And some countries may opt for nuclear, some countries may not opt for nuclear. So whether to go with nuclear or not, what kind of challenges you face within a government when you take those decisions, prioritizing technologies? Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the diversification, it's the energy diversification become like a national security issue now becoming. Mm-hmm. Because we see challenges from the other governments who rely on the one source of technology, one source of the supply chain, or the one source of generation capacity. They struggled during the volatile conditions. We already see that. That's why it's really important to diversify energy sources. In Uzbekistan, we were heavily relying on natural gas. Almost more than 90% of our generation used to be from natural gas. Now, last 3-4 years, we completely changed it. We deployed renewables, we increased hydropower development, we are putting the first of its kind utility scale battery storage systems in the Uzbekistan. Now it's exceeded 1,000 megawatt capacity. And last week, with Mr. Grossi was there in Uzbekistan, we started first of its kind integrated nuclear power plant building, first the concrete pouring ceremony last week. So we have 2 SMRs and 2 big 1,000 megawatt blocks already started building, first in Central Asia. This is the great achievement. And diversification for all countries. Energy mix, for your energy mix, you have to diversify. Whatever you have availability, you have to diversify, whether it's battery energy storage systems, whether it's a hydro, solar, whatever. In Uzbekistan, as I said, we heavily increased renewables because our region has a lot of resources. And with our neighboring regions, like Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, have water resources. And Kazakhstan have fossil fuel-based generation, which very complement each other when we interconnect each other. So the renewable, hydro, and fossil fuel-based, and Turkmenistan a lot of gas resource-based generations. So they're all interconnect each other. They will have a really good option for them. That's really important.
Thank you. Thank you. State Minister Mohammed, if I go to you also with the same question, what are the kind of challenges you face when it comes to diversification, both within your own administration and with people sometimes?
Okay, thank you. I think unlike Uzbekistan, I think you have quite a good source of fossil fuel, gas, natural gas. Maldives, we don't have any proven fossil fuel. What we have is the indigenous solar that we can tap. And other than that, we have been all the 75 years of our electrification, we have been using mainly diesel for our power generation. The grid upgradation. We have very old grids that needs to be upgraded in order to absorb more renewable energy. Of course, this is the direction that we are going. And our base load, we don't have any renewable source of base load. We don't have any hydro. We don't, at the moment, we don't have any plans for going nuclear, but we might have to see the options for that or any other natural renewable sources. It's all diesel, and renewable energy is intermittent, mainly solar, and we are under testing phase of some small scale wind and experimental stages of tidal and wave energy. And I think Anthony from Hitachi mentioned about the technological advancement in the grid upgradation components. That is vital if we want to increase our renewable energy components, the fraction of renewable energy in our grid. Since we don't have any base load, all what we are dealing with is intermittent sources. So we need very sophisticated management systems. And to attract private investors or even to multilateral banks and to formulate workable solutions, we have to have some de-risking factors that Elizabeth just mentioned some of that. So we are looking into this, what we can do in order to diversify. I would say this is a mix of strategic, institutional solutions, market-driven solutions. We are looking for the technology, advancement in technology, and other emerging technologies, how we can integrate into our mix. So we are in the process of looking new sources of energy and how it can be integrated into our small grids. Unlike, again, Uzbekistan, we have individual systems, individual grids. Each island is a small grid of less than 1 megawatt. Most of the grid scale is, the peak load is like 500, 600. Few goes beyond 1 megawatt. So, but still we need to have all the components of a grid, no matter whether it's very small. Still we have to work on that, and this is a very expensive process. So we are finding mechanisms to mitigate and finding private investors and other financing sources to have reliable systems.
Thank you. Thank you very much, State Minister Mohit. Obviously every country is so unique, and you have to come up with a power system or energy system which is country specific. Obviously they are unique, and Maldives is a smaller country, and as he quite rightly said, many systems less than 1 megawatt, and it's quite a challenge. Whereas Uzbekistan is a different story, and we have your own resources, it's a bigger country, and so on. So every country is different. Would you like to say something?
It's something that my colleagues mentioned, that they have several distributed area. So I think the better option to increase the distributed generation, microgrids there, because Germany is very advanced there. So developing microgrids in several areas, in the Maldives areas, I think it is the best option. Now I see it, because investor will see opportunity there. For you'll give the certain region, so investor will come and then deploy the microgrids there. This is the best option to go for.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Now let me come back to our technology provider. It would be great to hear, Anthony, what the latest kind of technologies, innovative stuff which you have been looking at when it comes to grid management, or in terms of other technologies you are developing. A few examples for us to hear, because some of these things may not come out in the press, for instance. You may have it only to yourselves. It's better that you share some of these things with us, all these people here in the audience.
Thank you. I think most of a lot of the innovation is being developed around data centers. And I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone in terms of the shift in energy demand that AI data centers are creating. So let me talk a little bit about them first. So in Asia Pacific, data center capacity is expected to triple by 2030, which is not so far away. And demand is already outpacing supply today, from what we can see. With these AI data centers, the workloads are accelerating that demand to such an extent that in some cases, a simple query on the website could require 10 times more energy demand than a standard workload. So that is extremely significant in terms of providing energy for these data centers. And they're essentially no longer just facilities. They're energy intensive, they're digital ecosystems, and they are redefining how grids must operate, and therefore how the technology needs to develop. But not only that, the project delivery times for these new data centers are tighter than ever. When we talk to data center companies, they cannot build quick enough, is the message that we're seeing. So the real challenge in terms of innovation and technology in managing these energy-intensive demand centers is not just how we generate the power, but it's how we connect, how we manage the power, and obviously stabilize the system as well. Because we're moving from centralized, predictable systems to distributed, variable, digital energy systems, which require a lot more technology. They're more complex in terms of how they operate. So this makes grid modernization very critical in terms of this sector, but also in utilities as well, in terms of how we integrate renewables at scale, how we handle the spikes from the AI data centers, and obviously how we maintain stability. And in some cases, data centers and utilities are leading the change in what I talked about earlier in terms of the business models. We're seeing many more data centers now entering into long-term partnerships with technology companies. And this comes back to how quickly they want to deliver. They want to secure demand in the technology before they are building their data centers so that they can connect to the grid as quickly as they can. So that is in some areas, some utilities are doing this as well, but we see much more progress from the data center. But moving on to the technologies, in terms of some of the more innovative solutions that we're looking at, I think, and this is quite pertinent to the ASEAN grid or the PAGI, which you mentioned, is high voltage transmission, which is a solution called HVDC, which is quite innovative, and we are one of the leading companies providing this solution. But this is a solution that's capable of moving large amounts of power very efficiently across regions, and is very suitable to what we talked about in terms of cross-border electricity supply. But we're also supplying advanced transformers to support high-density loads for data centers as well. And all of these products are more digitally capable, that can talk to each other and have a digital footprint to manage intense loads. And they are also critical to connecting renewable energy sources. But in addition to that, we need flexible solutions. So not just the technology on its own. We need a combined solution of different technologies, and that includes battery energy storage to balance intermittency, also aligns variable supply and volatile demand. And then coming back to digital and AI-enabled grid management. So we're seeing with these data centers in particular that they are becoming critical infrastructure as well. And their demand for uptime is insane. It's very, so predictive operations and predictive maintenance is also very, very critical, as is life cycle management. So moving into not just the initial purchase of the equipment, but then a life cycle service and maintenance program that can update this technology as the data centers are, they move on and they update in terms of their own technology as well. So in addition to that, we offer digital twins of power systems. So there can be a digital model of a particular equipment, which is easier to then predict in terms of failures or maintenance, etc. And then we're moving to AI-driven renewable forecasting of energy demand. So again, looking at the innovative side of how is the data center or how is the industry or how is the utilities going to operate and what is their demand going to look like much further ahead than just maybe day ahead forecasting, which is traditional solutions. So I think ultimately the future isn't about scaling data centers or renewables independently. It's about building an intelligent, flexible and integrated energy ecosystem. And I think, again, that comes with the different partnership models that I spoke about earlier. And I think if we can model those partnerships and we can move those partnerships forward, then we combine infrastructure, flexibility, and intelligence into the systems that we can then design that are resilient, not by default, but by reaction. And again, I think this is only possible by moving into partnership models rather than traditional business models.
Thank you very much, Anthony, by taking us through, all these developments in the technology. Yeah, it's quite interesting actually how AI and digitalization have picked up. Maybe a couple of years ago, we used to Google something and you get an answer, basically pointing us to the documents where the answers are. Now you get the answer directly as an AI solution. But as you said, it consumes so much of energy. Probably you may have to switch off that part when you search next time, because that will save a lot more energy if you don't really need it actually. Sometimes even if I want to find a publication, it gives me the AI solution, AI answer, which consumes much more energy than the standard answer which you get through a standard Google you may have had 2 years ago. Yeah, you are right. I mean, this is something which we struggle with. It's quite interesting that worldwide, it seems that the demand is outpacing the supply. It's not a question of money now, a question of the resources, question of technology suppliers and so on. That's something which we need to really see how we can deal with. Now here comes then, of course, financing is one of the most important parts of it. Even if you have the technologies and the suppliers, if you don't have money, you can't do anything, right? So my next question is to Isabel. what are the kind of innovative financing mechanisms we have within ADB, of course, with other MDBs, to provide support to these countries, particularly to our own DMCs, which may not be at the highest level of economic development, because their choices are very limited. As you quite rightly said, the cost of capital is a huge issue. And as I'm not a finance guy, but I can remember I heard, the cost of capital in the developed markets is much lower than the cost of capital in this part of the world. It's like a double penalty, like for us. We are the ones who really need to develop. At the same time, we are the one who would pay most for the capital which we are trying to get. So what are the kind of innovative financing mechanisms we have within ADB, with which you can help others?
So at ADB, we use a layered approach to provide solutions, financing solutions to our clients. Priyanka, you're correct. We have a large number of instruments that we can put together and create new instruments. The bottom line is that we're a single institution with a single balance sheet. So that enables us to be quite creative and to be able to develop instruments that may not exist today, if that's the solution that the client needs. But there are a handful that maybe I can mention because they're quite popular by our investment officers when we're structuring the financing. So I've already mentioned the partial credit guarantee in the case of Uzbekistan. That's basically an instrument that allows us to cover off-taker non-payment risk, and it enables us to bring alongside our financing other private sector financiers. So that's very popular. Second, we have the IFCAP. I don't know how many of you are aware of the IFCAP, but IFCAP is a guarantee facility where every dollar of partner guarantee ends up mobilizing up to $4.5 in ADB climate lending. This facility has been operational since November 2024, so it's been about a year and a half. And we have about $2 billion worth of guarantees from 8 sovereign countries. So that's also a very popular instrument that we use to bring climate finance to energy. We also have a very active ability to risk share at scale. That's another way in which we allow other financiers to take part in the very exciting energy transformation and transition story. Last year, we approved $2.75 billion of a master credit insurance program. We signed it in 2025. It counts with 10 global insurers. And basically, what happens is that we are able to offload some of our risk onto them, and they're able to take part in the energy story of Asia. Those are a few examples. The blended finance, which I already mentioned in my previous answer. So concessional finance is very, very popular. To give you an example, the monsoon wind project in Lao PDR, which is quite well known, we structured a $692 million financing package for a 600 megawatt wind power plant in Lao PDR. It was the first ever cross-border wind project in Asia. It was actually exporting energy to Vietnam. And ADB, in that particular case, we used $60 million worth of concessional finance to de-risk the curtailment risk of that project. In general, just to give you a sense of numbers, since 2012, so give or take 14 years or so, we have committed $720 million of concessional financing alongside ADB financing. So overall, we've supported 52 projects of a total of just under $10 billion in project costs. So this is an example. But just to wrap up the conversation, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are really taking a systemic approach to financing. Maybe historically you've been used to working with other entities where the conversation is at the project level for finance. That is true, but it's by design. In ADB, we take a comprehensive approach all the way from upstream policy support and to transaction advisory to governments for PPP transaction structuring and advisory, all the way to private sector financing. The result is really systemic and is transformational. If I can quote another example in Uzbekistan, A well-known project is the Guzar Solar and Battery Energy Project. It's a 300 megawatt solar plant that has 75 megawatt hour battery storage. That one was developed by Masdar. I think you mentioned Masdar, Deputy Minister. And we basically, for that particular project, we provided 30 million financing package, but a partial credit guarantee. And that partial credit guarantee provided 9 million to mitigate the off-taker payment risk. So it's yet another example of ways. The main message from this intervention in this question that I could leave with all of you, while some of you may be interactive at a project level on a specific financing structuring, please always remember that it's one small part of a much bigger role that ADB plays. And we're playing intentionally to make sure that the transformation is systemic.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for outlining what we offer our countries, when it comes to financing innovative technologies. And so what you all have to do now is to make sure that you have enough bankable projects for us to finance. Otherwise, we will not be able to deliver our targets from our side and to achieve the decarbonization objectives. Let me now go back to the government. We can talk about all these innovative solutions, innovative financing mechanisms, decarbonization efforts we are already, all of us are embarking on. But we have to make sure that we do all this with everybody, taken along with us, not only part of the population, not only some section of the population. Inclusive economic growth is very important. Inclusivity in all these efforts very important. So let me now hear from Deputy Minister Umeed. What do you do to make sure that your population, nobody is left behind, everybody is taken along with your innovative solutions, innovative technologies being deployed, and affordability is ensured at the end of the day, for these people?
Yeah, the inclusivity is really important. When you're planning for the energy systems, of course, there's not only engineering part, there's all this social part of it. And one of the part of the energy security is the availability, affordability, and accessibility, right? And affordability and availability is really important. Accessibility for the energy, for the society, for the rural areas, for the demand side, who needs this energy, it's really important. We need to think about it always. And in terms of this, we in Uzbekistan, the increasing generation capacities is helping for the not only residential, but it's helping for the small businesses also, because you need to think about agriculture, farmers, all kinds of stakeholders who needs this energy. It should be accessible and it should be affordable, the price-wise, because we are also the reforming the tariffs also, because last year we increased the tariffs, but in that tariff we separated the portion of the population who's consuming under 200 kilowatt hours. We put them, the government is covering 50% of their cost, because those vulnerable area, this low income families is benefiting for this, because they need to have access to the energy. And also we have started last year pilot projects for the community solar. Actually, in the western regions, community solar means the several stakeholders, several investors put the money to put the investment and create a solar farm. But we created another type of solar, community solar. Government is building the small 300 to 500 kV solar farms into the low-income neighborhoods, where the generated energy for the selling energy, getting the cash flow, covering part of the equity, and then the profit is distributed to that neighborhood's low-income families. This is really workable and really good mechanism. So this year, our president said, okay, let's do 1,000 neighborhoods. Now we have 930 neighborhoods already allocated, and we are deploying nearly 300 megawatts of the distributed solar power plants across Uzbekistan, identified low-income neighborhoods, which will help them to cover their electricity needs, also creating jobs in that neighborhoods. This is really important for the rural areas, also for neighborhoods to help them. I think it's really important to think about all other areas, as I said, while you're planning the power system planning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Let me ask, State Minister Moy, with what you do in Maldives, from that viewpoint, to make sure that your population, everybody is benefited, from these interventions.
Yeah, in Maldives, like I said before, we have been having electrification since 1950. It's been 75 years. But we have, though the Maldives spreads like over 900 kilometers with tiny islands, we have provided continuous electrification to all the small islands. In the past 20 years, it has been successfully going on. So now the task is to continue the uninterrupted power to the islands, and it comes at a cost. There's a heavy subsidized area, so our government is providing a lot of subsidy to the utilities. So, but this is something that we have to, because every government is working for the benefit or is well-being of the citizens, the public. So we have no choice, but at any cost we have to continue this, and I think we are on the right path. Now, as previously it was all diesel powered, now some islands we go like 30-40% from renewable sources. This is the trend we are changing with new technology, sophisticated instrumentations. We are changing to renewable energy more into our grid. At the same time, we make sure that it is not disrupted. So Umid just commented before, it's all isolated, decentralized systems. And we are finding ways to enhance these systems. I think Maldives, we won't be able to have a common grid with submarine cables. That won't be anywhere feasible. It will be too costly to have submarine cables for thousands of kilometers. So we are having isolated, decentralized systems. Nobody is left behind. Everybody gets 24-hour electricity, so throughout the year. The other question is, with these technological changes, what happens to the workforce that is being trained to handle fossil fuel generations? So we have ongoing programs to upskill our workforce to handle the coming sophisticated technological changes. That is an ongoing process with the government and the utilities. So we make sure that our public gets uninterrupted power supply and our workforce gets upskilled to handle this innovative coming technology.
Thank you. Thank you very much, State Minister. Let me switch to, again, to Hitachi. Of course, a completely different question and maybe a controversial one, but I would like to have your professional opinion on what is the prospect of nuclear power in Asia Pacific region from your viewpoint as a technology provider.
I think nuclear energy is gaining attention globally again, and I think this is based on the need for energy security, as well as push for net zero targets, and also integrating large volumes of intermittent renewables, so helping stabilize the grid from that point of view. We heard earlier how countries in Asia are actively expanding their nuclear capacity. And other countries may be taking more of a thoughtful and safety-first approach, mainly driven by land constraints or regional collaboration. But I think there is a role for nuclear in the energy system. It brings stable base load power, which helps stabilize the grids. And if we look at what has happened over the last few years with the development of renewables, in grids around the world, we've taken a lot of inertia out of the grids. So enough of the fossil fuel power plants that have been decommissioned, there's a lot of inertia that's been taken away from the grid. And that impacts the stability. So I think in addition of some stable base load, whether it's nuclear or other, could help in the grid, but obviously has its place. In terms of Hitachi, or my point of view, I think what our role is to support governments and system operators with grid infrastructure. And that includes digital integration capabilities. So in a way, we are technology neutral. But I think there is a case for considering nuclear, and that would enable all clean energy options to take a part in the grid, I think is really what we're saying. So yeah, I think there is a part to be played by nuclear.
Thank you for that very measured response. Right. Thank you very much. Let me now go to Isabel. In fact, again, coming back, we can do all these things. At the end of the day, we have to deploy these technologies, systems in respective countries. Unless the governments are with us, we can't do anything. Governments will have to help, for us to move forward in financing this. So, Isabel, what are the challenges, what are your expectations from the governments to make sure that we can deploy our financing in, bankable projects in those countries?
Thank you, Priyantha. If you allow me, I would like to talk as well what are the expectations from the private companies, but also the expectations from governments, because it takes two to tango. So let me start very quickly. What have we found the expectations of governments to be? And I may, Minister Mwabith, if you allow me, and also Deputy Minister Umid, I don't want to put words in your mouths, but overall, across the 50 countries that we work in, we find, first, governments expect the private sector to share, to be willingly able to share the risk at the right stage. I think they really do not expect companies to absorb all the risk, but equally they don't expect companies to expect the government to absorb all the risk. So it's basically willingness to share the risk at the right stage, particularly as we speak about first of its kind technologies. As you can imagine, first of its kind technologies, and you've already heard Anthony talk about these, they carry exploration or demonstration risk. And private capital alone cannot take the entirety of that risk. So that's one item. I'm going to give you an example of the government of the Philippines. The government of the Philippines established a 250 million geothermal de-risking facility to co-finance 50% of the exploration drilling cost. And that facility reactivated a pipeline that had been dormant in the Philippines for as long as I can remember, probably all the way back into 2012. So this is a big important aspect. Please share the risk at the right time and at the right stage of the project. So the second one is governments would like to be able to have these very forward-looking conversations with private companies as to what first of its kind technology really means, right? And specifically, mature technology in other markets may actually be a first of its kind technology in some of the markets in Asia. So the private companies have the ability to have these informed conversations with government. One case in point that has been mentioned today already is the HVDC cables. And that's, of course, they are part of the PAGI, the Pan-Asia grid, because the scale may actually provide a useful test for us to check whether this is first of its kind and what is first of its kind at this particular point in time for Asia and some of the countries in Asia mean. So this is, private companies need to be aware they carry a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that the governments would really want to be shared with them. Now, what do private companies expect from governments? I've already mentioned, first and foremost, stable regulatory frameworks and the ability of the government to reduce uncertainty. I've already mentioned that. That covers everything from acts, laws, regulation, but all the way to transparent rules, standardized PPAs, credible dispute resolution systems, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is quite important. As a matter of fact, if I go back to the example of Uzbekistan, the Masdar and the Guzar project example that I mentioned earlier really attracted record tariffs, record low tariffs, precisely because of the fact that there was a revised PPP law in Uzbekistan, and it was a structured auction program run by the government. So all of that helps. Second, cross-agency policy coordination. As I mentioned, private companies have to sometimes run around many different government departments. That is expensive for companies. It also gets everyone fatigued. So anything the government could do to allow that cross-agency policy coordination so that it brings clarity, and that involves finance, trade, investment, industries, all of those ministries and agencies need to be aligned. The most successful projects are the ones where there is actually a programmatic approach initiated by the government, when there's master planning, where there's a timely and well-sequenced policy and regulatory reform, because that long-term visibility that the governments will be giving private sector ensures that the right companies, robust companies, credit-worthy companies are going to be attracted to your market because they have a long-term visibility of the business opportunity that you're giving them. So that's a second point. A third point, if I may, and I already mentioned this, is of course investing in grid stability and in all the other enabling infrastructure. So we are talking about grid in the case of energy, but there's lots of other infrastructure, right? It's business infrastructure, business licensing infrastructure, all of those things that are quite important. The last point I wanted to mention is just very quickly, I think governments can actually help create demand, and governments have a role to play, not only in terms of providing credit-worthy off-takers by itself, but they also can demonstrate and signal and take the first step. So for example, or many of you know Singapore's MEA. So Singapore's MEA has to some extent demonstrated this. They have staged some sort of conditional approvals and licenses. And now I think it's over something like 8 gigawatts against something like 6 gigawatt, which is the target for 2035. And that certainty and that visibility has given developers and lenders an effectively investment grade revenue signal for private companies to come to that market. So they're saying our market is investable. Come here, prefer Asia versus investing somewhere else, Latin America or Africa or somewhere else. We have an investable market, we're serious. That really is appreciated by developers and by companies. In this way, the governments are able to de-risk by establishing demand. So we should never forget the fact that the governments have a very active role to play in establishing demand. And then subsequent to that, ADB then comes in and we de-risk the investments, and we work, as I mentioned, upstream with governments. And we, of course, would always be able to take some sort of residual risk and structuring risk, but we would be then with you long-term, making sure that those investable markets that the government has created are actually invested by the right credit-worthy private companies, technology providers, and credit-worthy and reliable lenders as well from the private markets.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Isabel, for that very elaborate answer. In the interest of time, I may be able to take only one question from the audience. And if you have any burning question, you can pause all the other questions during the lunchtime to the panelists. But now, maybe one question, if you have any burning question now. Okay, please. That's the last one. First and the last, yes.
Hello, everyone. This is Anil Chaudhary from Energy Efficiency Services in Ministry of Power, Government of India. And very interesting to note all the efforts, various kinds of energy diversity being discussed. One thing I would like to put here, that energy efficiency is also a fourth option, fourth, fifth, whatever you call it, virtual option. And government must think about it very seriously, because it is not being seen, it's not visible, so that so it's like a power plant already. Various kinds of program in India we have also observed that simple LED, when it was brought 15 years back, so it avoided power generation of around 10 gigawatt. So that kind of impact is there of energy efficiency. Whereas, and these are very simple technologies which can be very well bring into any ecosystem, and the impact is high. The most difficult part is implementation part.
Thank you.
So that is a point to ponder. So.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Of course, energy efficiency is negative generation. We always take it as part of integrated energy planning. Thank you very much for pointing out and the importance of energy efficiency. Though it's not a question, it's a very important intervention. Thank you. I think that's all the time we have, and let me take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for the fantastic, wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.